Good evening. Thank you for joining us at New Day Fellowship Church, growing church, new vision for a multicultural generation. We thank you for joining us this afternoon because we have a great special guest that's here that's going to be on the platform that's going to give us information of what's going on in Belton, Texas. And also let you know that if you're on Facebook, push like, comment, and share. And if you're on YouTube, push like, comment, and subscribe. Let me say it one more time. If you're on Facebook, push like, comment, and share. If you're on YouTube, push like, comment, and subscribe. But I want to introduce you to Dr. Matt Smith, the Superintendent of Belton Independent School District. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you for having me tonight. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sir. City of Belton, Texas, where I graduated from high school from. So, Mr. Matt Smith, I'm going to give it to you and let you have at what's going on in.
It's near and dear to my heart, and I know it's near and dear to a lot of people in this community as well. So thank you for having me this evening. This community know and understand what's going on in Belton ISD. On February the 15th, our Board of Trustees voted to A for $168 million and Proposition B for $5 million. And so this afternoon, as we're talking through this, I'm going to walk you through what's included in those propositions, what next steps are for the community, how the community can get involved in this, and also to be able to show and talk to you a little bit about how we got to those propositions for our voters to consider on May the 7th. So number one thing to point out to this community, I get asked this question a lot. What does this mean to the average taxpayer in Belton ISD? This is not a tax rate increase. It's a school district. We cover almost 200 square miles in the cities of Belton, Temple, and Morgan's Point. Residents within that area pay taxes to the Belton ISD, and their students go to Belton ISD schools. This means through these two propositions, this is not a tax rate increase for our voters to consider. That is different from overall taxes. I can't guarantee that tax bills will not go up because as property values rise and tax rates stay the same, you can end up paying more in your property taxes. But the rate that Belton ISD has control of will not go up because of these propositions. The second thing to point out is these bond propositions impact every campus in our school district, not just a select few. Again, every campus in Belton ISD, all 19 campuses, benefit from the propositions that are laid out in this election on May the 7th. Getting to these propositions, we started with community voice. It is a relatively new superintendent. I joined Belton ISD just before everybody shut down for COVID. I was here 10 days before the shutdown for COVID. And as a relatively new superintendent, I did not want to go out to a group of community members and say, here is my list of what I think I need or what we need in Belton ISD. I wanted to get community voice. You can see from this map that's in front of you, Belton ISD is situated and is a large chunk of the area right next to Temple ISD. Some people get confused because their address might say Temple, Texas, but their kids might go to Belton schools. The important thing to point out is we cover more than just the city of Belton and Belton ISD. We have almost as many residents, almost an equal amount of residents that send their kids to Belton ISD schools that have Temple addresses as Belton addresses. So it's important to point out, residents in the city of Temple are going out for a bond election right now, and if you live within the boundary for Temple ISD, you do not pay taxes to Belton ISD. If you live within the boundary for Belton ISD, you do not pay taxes to Temple ISD, and that's an important point to note. Getting back to how we got to these propositions, you can see we have a lot of land area in Belton ISD, again, almost 200 square miles. So I took the challenges that we have as a school district, as a growing community, to a group of about 70 community members to start out in the fall of 2021. Brought people together so that they could study the needs of a growing school district. Over 7 meetings and 28 hours, this committee dove into the issues that we're facing people to hear. We started with community voice because we felt it mattered for our school district. And in the end, we're going to end with community voice in an election on May the 7th. From there, I asked that committee 3 questions. Do we need a bond election? If so, tell me when. Superintendent, to provide recommendations to our Board of Trustees so that they can make good decisions. I took those recommendations, made recommendations to the Board of Trustees, and they finally settled on district. Again, you can see that we're almost 200 square miles. It's also important to note that we are a growing community. We have over 2,000 employees employed in Belton ISD now, 2,090 employees in Belton ISD. And we have 19 schools that serve our kids with over 13,300 kids, getting real close to 13,400 students right now. It's important to note that that number grew by over 700 students just last year. That's how many people are moving into Belton ISD right now. 700 new students to our school district this last year. And as you can see, we continue to grow over the school year. This map that you see in front of you is one of the key things that committee studied. This is from our demographer. The demographer comes in and they study the housing trends in the school district, where all the new building is going, where the new houses are going, and what projections for student enrollment might look like in our school district. The map that you see in front of you has a lot of green areas and yellow areas on it. If you take a look to the north of the map, and you can see up here toward the top, there's a lot of green areas around Tarver Elementary School. That is up off of West Adams near 317. It's a fast-growing area. You see a lot of houses going up in that area, and all of those green areas mean that they are actively building subdivisions right now, meaning new homes are going up right now in those areas. It's also important to note you see some yellow areas right up here as well. Those yellow areas are future subdivisions where more houses are planned. In just those two subdivision areas, the two yellow rectangles that you see up there, in those two areas, they're planning on 1,050 new homes in Belton ISD. So we are growing rapidly in the north of our school district. If you go south, down into Belton, you can see an area down here in the green area. That's the Three Creeks subdivision. That's at the southernmost part of our school district, down near the lake. And down there, there's a subdivision building called Three Creeks that has 1,500 homes planned for it. Currently, there are about 850 completed, which means you have about 650 more homes to be completed within this subdivision. So again, that's growing. But important to note, you can see this shoe-shaped area, the yellow area in Miller Heights attendance boundary. That is a brand new subdivision that they're just starting to build roads and put utilities in there for. That is planned to house 1,700 new homes in the south of our district. So you can hear the growth in the north, up near Tarver Elementary School. You can hear the growth in the south, but you can also see all of these green and yellow areas throughout the school district. Our school district is growing rapidly in all areas, but primarily in the northern part and the southern part of our school district. This has been a trend for a while, and we've been growing for about 2.5% since our last bond election that was held in 2017. That 2.5%, though, jumped up this last year to 5.8% growth as a school district. And you can see from the fall of 2017 with an enrollment of 11,000, we're up in 13,000 already. And you can see by the fall of 2025, we're going to be over 15,600 students. These numbers, again, are from our demographer, the ones who have been working with Belton ISD since about 2014. All of these reports are available on our website so people can see the history of these presentations and what growth has happened. Our demographers have been very accurate in predicting the growth for our school district. So when they tell us that over the next 5 years, we're projected to go 3,100 more students, we feel like we need to plan for those 3,100 students because they're coming based on our demographer's projection. What this means for us is a challenge specifically at our elementary schools. Over the past few years, we were able to open up a couple new facilities thanks to our voters in 2017. 2017 was the last bond election passed in Belton ISD, and thanks to a yes vote from our voters, we had a new high school, Lake Belton High School, that was built. We had a new elementary school, Charter Oak Elementary School, that was built. But it's also important to note that we also opened up a new middle school and all that. It wasn't a brand new facility, but we opened up Belton Middle School. So we have 4 middle schools now, 2 comprehensive high schools, 1 high school of choice, and 11 elementary schools. I share that with you because thanks to the opening of two secondary schools, the middle school and the high school, we don't have a lot of increased enrollment pressure on those schools right now. We have the space that we need for right now. But you can see, based on this chart right here from our demographer, if the cells are highlighted in red, that means the school is over capacity for the students that they serve. Our challenge is at elementary school enrollment in our school district right now. I pointed out in the north area of our school district, Tarver Elementary School, you can see by our demographer's projections in the fall of 2022, they will open with 825 students. That's over the 800 student capacity that school was built for already. If I go to the south of the district where I pointed out that Three Creeks subdivision, Chisholm Trail Elementary School is actually the largest elementary school in Belton ISD, and they're projected to have 930 students, 933 to be exact, in the fall of 2022. That facility was built for 800 students. So our growth is being felt within our elementary schools. Our teachers, our staff, our parents are all feeling that growth within those areas. It's important to note that our Board of Trustees has been working to help with that over the past couple of years. Even in the time of COVID, we added 8 new portables to help deal with the growth at Tarver and at Chisholm Trail Elementary School. 8 total, 2 at Tarver, 6 at Chisholm Trail, to help deal with that continued growth. But based on our bond exploration committee, they don't want those portables to be a long-term solution for the growth in the school district. Last thing I'll point out on this chart is that the planning that has gone forth in Belton ISD in the past has been good planning, and we've been thoughtful with the use of our facilities. I point out Charter Oak Elementary School. Charter Oak is the newest elementary school within Belton ISD. It was built in 2019 thanks to the passage of the 2017 bond, and you can see that by the fall of 2024, 812 students will be at Charter Oak Elementary School, pushing it over capacity already. So even the newest facilities in our school district are filling up thanks to the growth in Belton ISD. The committee also, beyond the demographer report, studied the condition of some of our older buildings in the school district. And I know this is near and dear to a lot of the hearts in our community as well. What we did is we had an outside facilities assessment come in. We had plumbers and roofers and electricians and architects and engineers come in and evaluate every one of our facilities, taking a look at the oldest ones to the newest ones. And what they did is they gave us a facilities condition index score. That facilities condition index score scored each facility and said, these are the ones that need the most help. These are the ones that need the most attention as a school district. They also gave us what they call an educational adequacy score. So the architects looked at the footprint and they thought about the needs of the teachers to make sure that they could have the education that we want for students in our school district, and they gave us an educational adequacy score as well. And based on those two things, we got scores for every one of our facilities in the school district. In summary, what they found, and it makes a whole lot of sense when you think about it, our older facilities need the most attention because they've been on the ground for a long time and in use for a long time. That doesn't mean they haven't been well cared for. In fact, they noted they had been well cared for. But when you have elementary schools like Miller Heights Elementary School and Southwest Elementary School that have been serving students for 50 plus years, you have attention that needs to be paid to those schools. They found also that there were 3 schools that really rose to the top that needed the most attention, and those were Miller Heights, Southwest, and Belton High School. Belton High School was opened in 1979. From there, they took information from our financial advisor as well, and they looked at the financial health of the school district, and basically they went and said, yes, we do need a bond election. So they answered the first question that I asked of that bond exploration committee: do we need to consider a bond election for Belton ISD? The answer was yes, and the reasons why were listed up here. We have accelerated growth in the school district. We have aging facilities and changing needs. If a school was opened in 1960, there's changing needs that you have for it. Education doesn't look the same now as it did then. So you have aging facilities that you need to invest in. We want to make sure that every student, no matter what building they attend, has equal access to great opportunities, and the committee felt strongly about that there needed to be investment in the older facilities so that they had the same opportunities as students in the newer facilities. And then finally, safety and security were items that they prioritized. We know we live in a world that's challenging right now. We want every family to feel safe sending their kids to school, every teacher to feel safe attending that school, and an investment in safety and security was prioritized by this committee as well. Finally, they said, you do need to pursue that bond election. You need to pursue it in May of 2022. And then they answered the third question that I asked them, what do we need to include in the bond propositions? On the left-hand side, you can see here a list of projects. This was the prioritized list from the committee group that met all fall last year. Basically, at the end of it, they said, here are the list of things that we think you need to consider, and they rank ordered those for us to consider. You can see that total included over $430 million in projects. Obviously, we're not going out and asking our voters to consider that right now. My job was to take that information, take their recommendations, and narrow that down into something that we were able to do in Belton ISD at this time. And so the middle column that you see was my recommendation that I presented to the Board of Trustees at the end of January. You can see that dollar amount went down to $168 million. You can also see almost line for line the things that were prioritized in the list for me as a superintendent were the same as the list that they provided as a community. Again, we started with community voice and we took their advice in these bond propositions. The yellow areas were items that I adjusted based on dollar amount, and that's based on information that I have as superintendent and I felt was important for our board to consider. Finally, on the right-hand side, this column over here, you can see the final propositions that the Board of Trustees landed on. In Proposition A, you can see a list of items that are included in that bond proposition, and I'll give you some more information in just a minute about all of those projects. And then down here, Proposition B says technology, devices, and equipment for $5 million. That ended up being Proposition B, and I'll explain why those two things are separate for our voters to consider. Ultimately, it leads to the two propositions that I started the presentation with, and so that was the process we went through. 7 meetings, 28 hours, multiple community members, a process where we asked the question, do we need a bond election? If so, when? And what should be included? We took that information, built off of it, provided it to our Board of Trustees, and it resulted in these two propositions that are listed for our voters to consider on May the 7th. In Proposition A, in detail, I want to walk through some of the projects that are included in this because I think they're important to our community. First of all, land for future needs. There's been some questions that pop up about land for future needs for our school district and how much land we actually need. We asked the demographer to give us a build-out projection, meaning what it might look like in Belton ISD over the next 30 years if we built out all available land in the housing trends. They predicted the housing trends to the best of their ability. Again, right now we have 13,000 plus students in our school district. They're saying over the next 30 years, we could get to 28,000 students in the school district. We currently have 11 elementary schools. They're saying we'll probably need 19 elementary schools. They said we have 4 middle schools. They're saying we could need 6 middle schools. So you can hear the growth in the school district, and one of the biggest pieces is we just opened Lake Belton High School as a second comprehensive high school, but based on the demographer projections, we could end up needing 3 or 4 high schools by the time we're all done in Belton ISD, depending on the size that we want to have those schools at. So land for future needs is going to be really important to us as we continue to grow. We know land prices are going up right now. Most likely they're not going to go down, so buying those with the current bond funds that are proposed in this would allow us to plan for the future as we continue to move forward. Construction of 2 elementary schools and the addition at Southwest Elementary School, I'm going to hold on talking about those for just a minute, and I'll refer back to it on the next slide. Career Technical Education and Fine Arts at Belton High School and Belton New Tech High School. Belton High School was opened in 1979 and has served our students well for many years. But as we see the condition of those facilities, there's some specific investments that need to be made in career and technical education classes. These are hands-on learning experiences for kids that can allow them to get certifications and enter into the world of work right after high school, excuse me, or pursue their college education after high school. I share that with you because I'll use medical professions as an example. Right now at Belton High School, we have medical professions classes that are actually being held in portables behind Belton High School. These medical professions classes allow students to learn to become nurses, doctors, et cetera, in our school system, and those portables aren't conducive to their current learning experiences. So an investment in career and technical education and fine arts facilities at Belton High School will help us ensure that students that attend Belton High School have similar facilities to what they have at Lake Belton High School that just opened. The fine arts facility expansion at Lake Belton Middle School is an important one to note too. We have 2 middle schools in our district that were actually built and designed as intermediate schools. They were designed as smaller schools out of our 4 middle schools that we have. Lake Belton Middle School is one of those. They also have the largest fine arts program in our middle schools, and Lake Belton Middle School currently has orchestra students that are having orchestra class in regular classrooms right now within that building. This would allow for a fine arts expansion at Lake Belton Middle School so that their band hall could be, a new band hall could be created, the orchestra program could move into the band hall, and we would free up those classroom spaces that are currently being used, and we would be able to use those for regular classrooms. Capital improvements and renovations at Belton High School, these are big items. These aren't like changing light bulbs or water heaters. These are big items like HVAC systems and electrical systems that need to be redone in an aging facility. And then finally, the BISD Ag Barn expansion. Fun fact about our school district, we actually have the 5th largest FFA program in the state of Texas in Belton ISD. We are not the 5th largest school district in the state of Texas. And so as we continue to grow and continue to add students in our school district, we actually need additional room at our Ag Barn for such a popular facility and popular program. We currently own the land thanks to thoughtful planning by our Board of Trustees, and we're able to address that moving forward. Thank you very much. We're able to address that Ag Barn expansion moving forward thanks to the land that we currently have next to the Ag Barn. Again, with the 5th largest FFA program, that tells you the demand for such a popular program in our school district. So this would allow an expansion of student opportunities as we continue to grow. There are 2 proposed locations for the elementary schools that I mentioned. I told you I'd come back to this a minute ago. Currently, I pointed out Tarver Elementary. We'll see if my pointer works. It does not work on this, so I'll walk over. Tarver Elementary is located in the north part of our school district, right up here. That's off of West Adams, and it is a fast-growing area. I pointed out that the enrollment at Tarver Elementary School is going to be over 800 students in the fall. We currently own 15 acres right off of Pea Ridge Road, just north of Tarver Elementary School, where we would build a new facility. That would allow us to relieve the overcrowding at Tarver and allow us to plan for those 1,050 new homes in that area as well. So we would be able to adjust those attendance boundaries if a new facility is built in that area and relieve the overcrowding that we're seeing. In the south of our district, it's a little bit different, but we still are able to accomplish the same thing. We're actually able to accomplish a little bit more. We have a property right here in the Hubbard Branch subdivision that we own 15 acres as well. Hubbard Branch is an actively building subdivision with rooftops going up there. It's about 1.5 miles away from the current Miller Heights facility. As I mentioned earlier, Miller Heights was one of the schools that scored the worst on our facilities condition index. It needs the most attention as a school. The capacity at Miller Heights Elementary School is also lower than many of our elementary schools because it was built quite a long time ago. This proposition would build a new elementary school in the Hubbard Branch subdivision, and Miller Heights Elementary School would be taken offline. That would do 2 things for us. It would address that aging facility that we're having issues with, but it would also help us increase capacity in the south of our district because we would build a new school that has capacity for 800 students versus the capacity of 400 students at the current Miller Heights facility right now. It's also important to note that that 400 student capacity at Miller Heights right now includes 5 long-standing portables that have been there for multiple years. Our bond exploration committee said those need to go. And so we would address that aging facility, we would get rid of those long-term portables, and we'd be able to build a new school for the students in Miller Heights. I also mentioned, though, we would increase the capacity. As I pointed out earlier, Chisholm Trail Elementary School is over capacity for the fall of 2022. And we're going to need to ensure that we address that somehow by adding 400 new seats here in the new school. And also, we mentioned a Southwest Elementary School expansion in an investment in Southwest Elementary School. We would add 100 new seats at Southwest Elementary School and address some of the aging facilities they had there. In the 2017 bond election, Lakewood Elementary School got some upgrades like a new gymnasium, et cetera. This bond proposition would allow Southwest to get some of those same upgrades and would also expand the capacity at Southwest Elementary School by 100 students. So overall, in the south of our school district, we would gain approximately 500 seats to alleviate the overcrowding at Chisholm Trail Elementary School. That would allow us to address the overcrowding, allow us to get those seats for growth for the future, and continue to address the aging facilities that came out in our facilities conditions index. One question that I'm getting often right now is, why don't you use another property that you have? We own a property on Loop 121 off of Shanklin Road. We own approximately 100 acres there, thanks to thoughtful planning by our Board of Trustees. It's right near the Bell County Expo Center. There are 2 reasons for that. As I mentioned in our demographer report, they said we might need 3 to 4 high schools in build out in Belton ISD. Typically, a high school, you look at about 100 acres to build the high school on. I believe Lake Belton High School was built on 106 acres, if I'm not mistaken. That 100-acre plot of land we plan on keeping for a potential future high school site. The second thing is there aren't utilities run to that site yet. In the fall of 2020, the City of Belton did a presentation to our Facilities Committee and talked about that in depth with our Facilities Committee. It would take an additional $4 million in the fall of 2020 for us to address that. And obviously with increased construction costs and this timing now, it would have gone up pretty drastically. So without utilities to that property right now and holding on to that property for potential future use for a high school, we would keep that 100 acres on Loop 121 for future use. Proposition A also includes a Delta program facility. Many people in our community don't know that we actually serve students beyond typical graduation age. These are students with special education needs in our system that sometimes typically don't get the regular high school diploma. They have additional needs that don't allow them to qualify for that regular high school diploma and trajectory. As a school district and school districts around the nation, for students in that situation, are required to serve them up until age 22. We currently have 27 students in our school district that are in the Delta program that continue to learn after their typical graduation age. It is a growing school district, and based on our current enrollment, we predict that will increase to 54. It will double in the next 5 years. The education for the students in our Delta program doesn't look the same as a traditional classroom experience. This isn't English class that we're sitting there talking about English class or math class. They learn transition skills, life skills, access to the community, job-ready skills, so that after they age out, after the age of 22, they're able to enter into our community in the most independent way that they possibly can. I like to use the example of students in a welding class. If you were going to teach a student how to weld, you wouldn't put them in a math classroom and not give them the equipment for welding. The same situation can be said for our Delta students. This would allow us to design a facility where they can work on life skills like loading dishwashers and living in an apartment, job skills like working in an office setting, community access skills, so the facility would be designed for their specific learning needs, just like career and technical education facilities are designed for career and technical education classes. Safety and security items would continue to be addressed in the school district. We've worked hard to address those since the last bond election, but we're going to continue to work hard to do that. That would increase cameras, increase lighting, increase safety and security and access points at the front of our schools. We want to make sure, again, that all of our parents, our students, and our staff feel safe and secure attending all of our schools. Technology infrastructure are items in the walls. These are the wires, the access points, the switches, the things that make technology work within a school system. That would be included in Proposition A. And then finally, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and roofing items. Again, major items as a school district that we would address that aren't often seen, but are really needed to help us function as a school district. Proposition B, again, is a separate proposition. And the reason why, in 2019, a legislative session requires school districts to put technology devices as a separate proposition for voters to consider. This doesn't mean that you have to vote for either Proposition A or Proposition B. You can vote yes for both, no for both, yes for one, no for the other one, whatever you choose. But state law requires us that if they're technology devices, we have to list them as a separate proposition for voters to consider when they go to the ballot box. So that's why this one is listed separately. One of the questions we get often is, why use bonds? Don't school districts have enough money to just build facilities? The answer to that is no, and actually, as a school district, we have two buckets of funding that we use to run a school district. The first is a maintenance and operations budget, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in depth in just a minute. And the second one is called an interest and sinking budget. That is how we pay for debt service. It's like having a mortgage on your home or things that you would finance in your own home budget. These are things that we finance as a school district. So in a bond election, we are talking about the interest and sinking tax rate. This is important to note because if you look at the maintenance and operations budget, what people typically think of running a school district, you can see our current maintenance and operations budget in Belton ISD, 84% of it is for salaries and benefits for the 2,090 employees in the school district. That leaves 16% left to pay monthly utility bills. If you were to continue to finance technology, it would have to come out of here. If you were going to buy portables, you'd have to figure out a way to buy it out of here. If you were going to buy buses, you would have to figure out a way to buy it out of this. This pie is a challenge for a fast growth school district because, again, the majority of your maintenance and operations budget goes to salaries and benefits for the staff that we use to serve our students and families. Our current tax rates, you can see here, most people look at their tax bill and how much they pay. Totally understand that. I live in the school district as well. My parents live in the school district as well. We see our tax bills and we know what is paid, but the tax rates are important because that's what Belton ISD can control. But actually, in this last legislative session, we have a little bit less control over that maintenance and operations tax rate. That is now calculated by TEA, the Texas Education Agency, after the last legislative session. So the interest and sinking tax rate, that is, again, how you pay debt service, how you pay for the loans to build new facilities or do major remodels to your facilities. We, as a school district, in the public finance system for the public schools in the state of Texas, have to go out to voters and get voter approval to actually issue bonds to build those facilities. That's why we're going out to the voters on May the 7th. You can see our tax rates in the school district over the past 5 years and projected for the upcoming year. Our school district, the Board of Trustees, has done a good job managing the funds of the school district. The tax rate has gone down since the last bond election in 2017. Yet I still have people saying, wait a second, I'm paying more in taxes. How can that be? There's two things that go into this. Your tax rate, that's what the school district sets it at, and your property values. That's what your property is appraised at. Those are two important pieces of information. As your home values go up, even if your tax rate goes down or stays the same, your tax bill could still go up. Again, we can do these two propositions that are laid out, Proposition A and Proposition B, without raising the tax rate in Belton ISD. There's not a raise to the INS rate for the school district. And you can see these are other fast growth school districts in Central Texas. You can see that our tax rate is actually lower than most of those and would remain lower than most of those school districts despite dealing with the same challenges they're dealing with adding 700 students plus a year in a school district. The reason you can do that is because we have more people moving into the school district to help share the tax burden. So as you see more houses come in and more people come in and pay taxes, that means they can help level out that tax burden for the future for us. The second thing is, with the growing property values, should voters say yes to these bond propositions, you're saying yes to us to be able to use those that increase to pay off the future facilities and the renovations that we need as a school district. Finally, the last one that's important to note, our Board of Trustees has worked really hard in the past 10 plus years to continue to manage finances well as a school district. They have constantly looked at ways to pay down debt and to refinance debt so that they're using and capitalizing on lower interest rates. Just in the fall of this year, our Board of Trustees refinanced older bonds that we're still paying off and saved $4 million in future payments by taking advantage of lower interest rates. So they continually look at ways to make sure that they're being thoughtful stewards of the financial resources of our taxpayers. One other question that comes up often is, I don't understand, if you have a growing tax base, shouldn't you already have enough money? Why are you coming to us and asking us for bond elections? Two things to note in that. We're required to, as a school district, if we add any new facilities, we're required to actually go out to our voters and ask your permission to actually add those facilities or not. The second thing is we actually don't get to keep all of that revenue. The way the state funding system works in the state of Texas is your local property values go up and local taxes or more local taxes are collected, the state actually sends you less money. So it's not like you get a windfall of money as your property values go up. In fact, the state sends you less money in all of that. Over 65, if you're over 65 in the school district or any school district in the state of Texas, and it's your homestead, you are able to stay consistent with your taxes that you pay from the age you turn 65. So for those people in Belton ISD that are 65 or older, your tax bill will not go up based on state law for school district taxes. Whether you live in Temple, whether you live in Belton, your taxes are frozen from the age 65 on up because of state law. Now that's not the exact same for cities and counties. Cities and counties, there's an optional levy freeze, but as school districts, we're required to freeze that. So again, 65 and older don't have to pay an increase in taxes because of this. Your taxes are frozen from the day you turn 65. In 2019, new ballot language was required for all school districts based on legislation that was passed in the 2019 legislative session. So at the bottom of both of our ballots, you're going to see a line that says, this is a property tax increase. This is a property tax increase. That is required by state law. Personally, as a superintendent, I would like to explain that in a little more detail, but I'm not allowed to. I'm required to put that on here. I've talked to you about this is not a property tax rate increase for our school district, but I think the intent of the legislation was making sure that voters know if you vote yes for a bond election, it is adding new debt and it is adding tax that has to be paid off over a series of years. I think that's the intent of it. I would sure like to explain it in different ways on the ballot, but I'm not allowed to. Again, it's not a tax rate increase by the school district, but it will say this is a property tax increase on these ballots. Financial stewardship has been an important piece of our school district for quite a long time. Our district has done a good job managing the funds, and there are two things I want to point out from this slide. First of all, I already mentioned the refinancing of some long-term debt and saving $4 million. We just did that in the fall. We continue to look for those opportunities to make sure we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. The second thing is that last bullet. Every year we have an outside audit firm. They do not work for the school district. We contract with an outside firm to come in and audit all of our finances. We continue to receive the highest rating we can have for that audit, and we are proud of the work that's been done. And you can see that through all of the awards we continue to receive based on our finances. What happens if the bond passes? You can see we'll address those areas I talked about. We're going to address the growth. I told you how by building new facilities. We're going to address the aging facilities issue that we have in the school district. I mentioned a little bit about that as well. We're going to be able to buy land for future needs, because if 3,100 students come to us in the next 5 years, we're going to need additional schools. And if we end up with 18,000 students like they're projecting by the end of the decade, we're going to need additional schools. So buying land would be addressed in this bond election as well. Again, we would be able to do that without a tax rate increase to the INS tax rate. If the bond fails, what do we have to do? We have to take a look at our maintenance and operations budget, that pie that I showed you, where 84% of it is salaries and benefits for our staff in the school district. We have to figure out ways to use that to be able to address the things that are in these bond packages, the things like space for students, for the 780 students that were projected in the fall, and for the additional students to the next year and the next year. We have to figure out how to add space by adding portables, by adding additional things like that in our school system. We have to figure out how to buy buses out of that budget. We have to figure out how to buy technology out of that budget. We have to start to talk about limiting program offerings. So I brought up the ag barn expansion. We wouldn't be able to obviously expand the ag barn without the bond election, so we would limit the number of students that are in that ag program and other programs like it. We wouldn't be able to buy that land for future needs. And also we would have to do things like increase class sizes for our teachers. We'd have to readjust attendance boundaries more frequently, so we'd be moving families between schools. We'd have to explore every option possible, because whether we like it or not, I'm glad that people want to move to Belton ISD, but we're going to have 780 new students in the fall of this next year. We're going to have an additional amount of students next year, and the following year, and the following year. They're going to continue to come. We have to figure out ways to accommodate the growth as a school district. Ultimately, the only thing I can ask of our community is to get out and vote. I can't lobby for or against a bond election in my role as a superintendent. I believe we have a presentation and packages that are based on the needs of the school district, and we're asking our voters to go out and vote in this upcoming election in the month of May. Get out and vote and have your voice heard so that we can continue to move forward as a school district. You can see the voting information is listed here. Early voting begins April 25th, and election day is on May the 7th. It's important to note that we've partnered with the county, and so any place in the county, in Bell County, if you are registered to vote in Belton ISD, you just need to take your ID. You can go to that location and you can get the appropriate ballots for Belton ISD. So even on May the 7th, if you're at Bird Creek Burgers in downtown Temple having lunch and you see a sign that says vote here, you can go there with your ID if you live in Belton ISD, and you can vote at that location and get the ballots for Belton ISD if you live within our attendance boundary. If there are any questions, I would love for people to visit our website. You can see www.beltonisdbond.net. And there's a whole host of information on there. It shows you everything that we've studied in the fall, all of the proposition information, voting information. We'd love to have you visit that. If there are questions, feel free to contact our school district. We want to be able to have an informed voter go to the polls coming up here in the end of April for early voting, or on May the 7th for election date. And that concludes the presentation for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to someone else to take it from here. That's me.
All right, I want to thank you and thank Pastor Beeman especially for inviting Dr. Smith and myself over here to speak to y'all. My name is Mike Pilkington, and as Dr. Smith said, he cannot ask for a vote either yes or no. He can only present the facts. I am representing the committee, Vote Yes for BISD 2022, and I am asking for a yes vote on this. I believe that the facts state, the facts themselves say vote yes for this. We're a growing district. We're a growing area. I know many on here are probably in TISD, and y'all are also having a bond. I very much am a proponent of voting yes for that one as well. but I'm here to speak to this one today. I tell everybody I'm a Wildcat as long as they're not playing my Big Red over there. So I'm for both schools. The schools in our area, we have premier schools in our area. If we don't keep ahead of the curve with our growth, we'll get behind on that, and maybe not have the schools that everybody wants to move to and be at anymore. Just the need for especially the elementary schools, as we've seen on here. I mean, we have to put the kids in portable buildings if this doesn't pass. That's not a good thing. That's not the best situation for learning. And as Dr. Smith showed you, several of the other improvements that we have going on is not only for space, but also just for better learning space. As he was saying, it's hard to learn, it's hard to teach certain things in just a regular old classroom. You need special classrooms for it. And this bond accomplishes that stuff if we can get it passed. And if, like I said, if that one slide that he shows of what we have to do if this bond doesn't pass doesn't just scare you to death for our community, then I don't know what would. We have to get this done. I especially get some of the, went to BISD, I was in the band. I get the band hall firsthand. I was FFA president, so I get the ag stuff firsthand. And of course, I went to elementary schools and was in portables. I get one in the good schools. I want to pass on that I had a conversation today with a parent of one of our fixing to graduate Delta students, and she's just spoke so much about how much this Delta program did for her son, and how he's managed to get out. He's got a job at Mary Hardin Baylor now, and how proud he is to be becoming self-sustaining and what that program has done for him. I'll say I didn't have firsthand knowledge of that, but just listening to that really touched my heart and reiterated the need for that program and the growth in that program and having them their own space, enough space and a special space for them to have the tools and equipment that they need to help with that. And as was reiterated several times on here, this is a zero rate increase bond. As Dr. Smith said, all of our taxes are going to go up. Just the values of our properties are going up. But as a result of this bond, it will not go up anymore because of this bond, because of the fiscal responsibility that our school board has had and our staff has had for the last few years. They've made it possible to be able to do this without raising our tax rate. So I just want to reiterate that. There's really, in my opinion, no reason to vote no for this. I think we should all be going out there and voting for yes for our kids, for all our area schools when they need the help. And again, thank you for inviting us here, Pastor Beeman, and getting to speak to you and be proponents of this bond.